Do it. Cool. So thank you all for dialing in today. And another session of listening to Ryan and myself rant about identity assurance and security. But it is our favorite topic. And thank you again for being here with us. Today, we're going to start talking about a really interesting conversation that we've had internally with ourselves and our customers. And with zero trust being such a big buzzword, we want to talk about how zero trust must begin with day zero and how we here at HYPR are helping our customers make that happen. And so it's a really exciting time, but first we'll start with some stats that we actually got from a very recent survey. So we asked a bunch of enterprise type companies about some of their identity verification challenges. And it's no surprise to many of you, and especially us, that the identity verification piece has become critical for businesses these days, especially as they see, more and more instances in the news about social engineering attacks, interview fraud, people interviewing for jobs, and then, the person who shows up not actually being the same person. We'll touch on that quite a bit today. And, 40% of companies said that identity verification is their top identity challenge. And that's not a surprise. I think if we did the same survey a year ago, it would have been much smaller than that percentage-wise. But today it's top of mind for every single security executive. They're having to answer questions to their board about the identity verification process that they have in place. Most companies do not think that the identity risk monitoring that they do today is comprehensive. The average enterprise manages a person's identity in about 25 places. So there's a lot of room for risk in there. And many companies do not feel like they have a handle on this. And pretty much everybody knows that identity fraud has had a major financial impact on their organization. We've seen multiple examples of this very recently with some of our casino friends. But, it's unfortunate. It happens in every industry. And we think that hackers will continue to go for the low-hanging fruit, the least barrier to entry. And oftentimes that is the human and the identity verification process. So we'll talk about joiners, movers, leaders, levers, and much more in this session. So Ryan, take it away.
So well, first off, I was excited to be in our headquarters out in New York. Little did I know that you were going to be taking a nice little flight to my last night, and then we would be doing this live in separate locations. But hopefully you had safe travels, obviously. As you were talking about, Bojan, the common kind of high level groupings that we would put, identity bodies into an organization are joiners, movers, and levers, right? The joiners being the ones who are being onboarded. They could be your third-party contractors. They're just being created within the organization in the identity schema. Movers is basically your daily access. Maybe you're getting escalated privileges. Maybe you're going to go do something like PAM, maybe a privileged access management call of some sort. And then obviously, sometimes the life of an employee comes to an end, and there would be those who get offboarded or be deemed as leavers from the organization. Or maybe they're contractors and the contractor is up and the 30-day window, 60-day window, 90-day window needs to come to a close. The challenges that we see in most of this is that it's still, what we're going to do is focus on joiners in this, as Bojan had brought up. We're going to focus on joiners specifically. There are many, many different places that identity verification can take a step, but in this little live moment for the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, we're focusing solely on the onboarding and verifying. The challenges today, if you had joined us in our last LinkedIn Live, we did do this slide as well, but we want to make sure that the message is clear that there is still those challenges. It is a tangled web of experiences across the board, depending on the use case. And once again, we're going to specifically target in this conversation the employee onboarding type use case. And if you think about it, how do employees get onboarded? Historically, we had brick and mortar. You'd show up to your job and, hey, get handshakes, get maybe a driver's license and verify who you are as you go through your HR process. And maybe a badge would be handed to you. And then there's just this inherent trust of that physical component. pandemic upon us, everybody gets crazy. We go into a lot of remote access, a lot of remote onboarding. Call center is basically where most of this ends up falling. And then, there has been some pretty okay attempts at trying to do things on the web, but these experiences all have so much variable to them. There's a lot of error prone, as I think, Bojan, you were bringing up earlier. Like that's still a very manual process in place. And I think we've basically seen the statistics that users don't really do too well with being forced in this process.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if we look at, the current methods of onboarding people, right, whether they're employees or contractors, physical validation is the way that it had been done for a long time, back when everybody was largely in an office, especially for employees. However, that's not the case anymore. It's just not the reality for most industries. In 2023, 2024, employees expect a hybrid work environment. They want to be able to start a job from anywhere at any time. Organizations want to be able to onboard contractors and third-party folks as quickly as possible. And it just is not realistic to have physical validation anymore, right? So companies have gone to Zoom meetings, and these are tricky because you have the video aspect to it, but it's hard to ensure security across points in time. So is the person that is on the Zoom with you as part of a day one onboarding or day zero onboarding the same person that interviewed 2 weeks ago? And is it the same person 2 weeks later, or contractor who's working with your company? And we see a lot of companies doing no verification, right? So somebody will start a brand new job, they'll ship them a box with a laptop and a post-it sticker underneath the lid with their username and password. And that physical access, that the ability to get that box and open it up, is the only verification that's done, unfortunately. And it's kind of scary that is probably the most common way that companies do this today. And so we think that the industry needs to do better. We know that it needs to do better because the fraud continues to just stack up over and over.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting on how much that last category is still heavily relied upon. And I think there's even still some challenges with the middle, right? With the Zoom, like where we try to meet in the middle. The credential is the part where we start talking about you're going to give access to your enterprise. You're going to give access to a lot of resources. And where is that seamlessly done, right? That even with the no verification, I mean, that you're still handing out a sticky with a password. That's just overall scariness all around. Which we would then say, hey, welcome to Affirm. Affirm is the way we can start looking at solidifying and making this a little bit more user-friendly, and I think even a little bit more efficient overall on provisioning of a credential. We do have multiple use cases on the left-hand side of this slide, but the main drivers are that we do need to adhere to some form of industry standards. It does need to be at least an IAL2, preferably, as you issue a credential, because the credential you are going to be issuing to these users is a highly secured credential. It could be an AAL3 credential or an AAL2 credential. So you want to have some parity in these two levels of standards and assurance.
That's exactly it. And I think, what we do with Affirm is we can have a user go through HYPR Affirm through different stages of their journey of being onboarded as a contractor or employee. So we can gather signals like location, verifying their phone number, other things that are associated with their account every single time they interface with the business. And then we can correlate those instances over time to make sure that it's the same person indeed. And that also includes things like verifying documents or doing face recognition, so on and so forth. So we'll do a demo here in a few minutes, but first we want to talk about the use case of onboarding an employee or a contractor, and the journey of how some fraud tends to happen and how this technology can be used to alleviate that.
Yeah, so don't mind the bad actor in this one. It's very much a good guy. It just happens to be a picture, but you know, when you look at what interview processes, and this could vary obviously between organization, kind of just went with a fourth interview. I'm pretty sure some of us have all seen the 6 to 12 interview process in some organizations, but we'll just round it out to, you know, 4 is a good average. And you can see that we had an initial interview with our good guy here, Bojan, going through that interview process, but you know, finally gets to the point of accepting that job. You know, wooed every individual in the organization, did an amazing job on any coding test as he's going in as a senior developer. But then, you know, in essence, it's really me who's going to show up, who has zero idea on how to actually even open up my IDE and even write one line of code. I might be able to buy a little bit of extra time by using ChatGPT or something else to masquerade for a little bit longer. But in essence, I am not the one who actually went through that process. Now, that has actually been something that we have seen come up over and over and over again in conversations with a lot of our enterprises. And the way to kind of look at getting around that would be, if HYPR Affirm is in this process, there's a lot of variables that we can take out of the equation. One, that the initial interview is going to be onboarded, and there's going to be an anchor tied to that individual through the life of the life cycle of this identity at the very beginning. This is the very common term of bait and switch, and we want to mitigate the bait and switch problem for interviews. So with each interview, HYPR Affirm could be in the mix, doing a verification of that individual's you know, facial recognition, making sure it's the same person over and over. And as we get through the accepting of job offer, on day 0 or day 1, if I attempt to acquire a credential or acquire access, I'm not going to have the components. I cannot replicate being Bojan at the same time. I won't have any documents that will support it, and I will not have the beautiful face of Bojan to actually confirm that as well. So in essence, having this along that chain, there's a lot of kind of cool things that we can do, because some might say, hey, you know, do you really want to do a document verification on every one of these? And yeah, my answer to that would be no. What you would want to do is probably issue out a credential, like a passkey, on that initial interview. And then that passkey would be reused through the interview process over and over, reaffirming that individual's identity. And if there's anything that kind of gets suspicious, anything that seems a little interesting, there's always the ability to just re-trigger a doc auth if you have to. Do you want to add anything, Bojan?
Yeah, you know, it's just critical to make sure that what we're doing throughout the interview process, we are gathering all the different signals and then ensuring consistency in those signals, right? If somebody's interviewing at my company and they show up with 3 different phones to 3 different interviews, you know, I'm going to pull the fire alarm on that one instantly. And then if they show up on day 1 and it's not the same face as the person who interviewed last week or accepted the job, I'm going to pull the fire alarm on that one. So this is a good time to kind of set the tone for the demo that we're going to do today, which is that day 1 scenario here. So in this example, a onboarding coordinator. So this could be an individual who doesn't really know the person who interviewed for and accepted the job. It's just their duty to onboard their credential into the system. They're going to be inviting them to do a Affirm session. And we'll talk about how that Affirm session works and how it's going to be verifying that individual to make sure that it is them, not just on that day 1 scenario, but also the same person that was interviewed and accepted the job.
Bear with me as I get this video dialed in. You know, I had it all nice and smooth at the very beginning of this.
You know, it's, okay, we're in business.
Technology, I can win. So as Bojan was saying in this video, this is really from the aspect of a coordinator. So we've already gone through the process, right? So the user has successfully gone through the interview process. They've accepted the job, and this is on day 1. Now, the chances are, who in your organization is actually going to provide that onboarding scenario? That could very much be an HR coordinator. It could be an IT staff member who's been assigned a ticket to go and onboard a new employee.
Yeah,
So as,
so if you, Ryan, if you put it to the beginning of the video, what you see here on the left-hand side of the screen is the HR or onboarding coordinators screen. And on the right-hand side is the new employee. It's their first day on the job. So what has happened here is the company, in this case, HYPR, has sent this employee all the stuff that they need to be onboarded, right? So they mail them their laptop, and then they mail them their corporate badge. So they get that in the mail, they open up the box, and the first thing they do is, you know, on the day that they get started, they will get this link, text message link to be onboarded. They will click that link. As part of this process, we will verify their phone number through a one-time code. So that tells us that, hey, this person has access to the same phone number that they gave us. And this will be correlated with previous Affirm sessions they did as part of their interview process. We'll also ask them to provide us with their location. And again, we will correlate that with previous Affirm sessions that they did when they interviewed for this company. But this time they'll be asked to upload a photo of the badge that we mailed them, because it's their first day on the job. They'll upload the badge. And now the onboarding coordinator and the new employee will get into a chat room. And the coordinator will see all the stuff that's been verified about them so far. It is consistent with previous sessions of Affirm that they did as part of their interview. And then they'll have this lovely chat where they just have a regular conversation. But in order for this individual to be issued actual credentials, which they can then use to log into their laptop or their corporate resources, they'll be required to do a video chat with the onboarding coordinator. Now, in previous Affirm sessions, when they were doing their interview, this individual did video chats with the interviewer. So what we can do is we can correlate their current video conversation with those previous video chat sessions that they've had to make sure that the face recognition matches for both the onboarding coordinator as well as the person who has just started at the company. So what this means is that if somebody else shows up to do this job on that first day, we will catch that right away and we'll be able to deny them entry into the organization. And so now the onboarding coordinator here will approve this individual and they will be issued a credential. In this case, it will be a FIDO credential, and they'll be able to have passwordless access into all their corporate resources. So this 2 minutes and 31 seconds video is essentially now making sure that this person who is starting at this company is the person that we actually hired, and that it is the individual that interviewed and not somebody else pretending to be them.
Yeah, it's such a good user experience and flow, in my opinion. I mean, it's basically a 2 minute, 2.5 minute video to do a quick verification and actually get that credential onboarded. I know we've talked to a couple of our customers and their onboarding processes were sometimes, a couple days in effort, as well as, even we've gotten it down to even a couple hours without Affirm, and now Affirm's coming into place. Now we can get this down to minutes. To me, that is a very efficient approach to, one, mitigating some fraud, as well as I think it's a decent, fun user experience. It's not it's not overburdened, it's not over challenging, and it also keeps a hint of privacy involved as well.
Yeah, and what's nice about this is once the person gets approved, they're issued a passwordless FIDO-based credential. So they're given that pass key. And what it really means is, for this organization has never had to put that person's password on a sticky note and send it to them. They've never had to email them even a temporary password. And they've never had to, text them a credential or something that could be intercepted or stolen. So this is just a much more secure life cycle. So it allows you to provision that secure credential on the first day of employment. And now this employee does not have a password anymore that they can be tricked into typing or accepting a push notification accidentally or anything else. So having that phishing resistant ability from day zero is critical for a zero trust architecture. So it's really exciting to be able to solve these types of problems for our customers end to end, and having that one single place where you can verify a person's identity and issue them a credential securely is a huge win for our customers and hopefully for the industry.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I'm looking forward to getting this out and seeing more and more of our customers using it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for dialing in today. Ryan, thank you again for doing this with me. And looking forward to the next episode where we'll be talking about passkeys, hopefully. So thank you.
We'll be talking about passkeys. It'll be great. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon. Bojan, I'll see you later.